Hey all, this is Redditosker. Recently I've gotten back into playing Helldivers 2, for their Escalation of Freedom update, which is the biggest update that they've done for this game. And over the course of playing, I think I now understand what the problem with Helldivers 2 is. Before this new content drop, I had not really been playing it. It has been a long time since I've jumped in. And apparently I'm not the only one. There have been several articles talking about how Helldivers 2 lost 90% of its player base. There was one 2 weeks ago talking about how the player count dropped below 10,000, which is around 2% of its all-time peak. And while it's normal for games to lose some of their player count over time, it's usually not this severe. For example, Deep Rock Galactic, a game that I will be comparing to Helldivers 2 a lot in this video, never reached the heights of popularity that Helldivers got to. But it also never sunk to 2% of its player base. Its player count is very healthy, with their 24-hour peak being close to half of their all-time peak, and their all-time peak is a number that they achieved 2 months ago, despite the fact that the game has been available for years. Now, this severe decline in players has been attributed to the developers being a little too eager to nerf things. They did recently nerf how fire works, as an obvious way to nerf a warbond that they're introducing that has fire as its theme. And the result is that people are not happy. The game's getting negatively reviewed on Steam, and if you go to YouTube, most of the channels and videos that I see talking about this are at least unhappy with this change. And it's true that the devs seem to have a talent for shooting themselves in the foot. This new update could have been an opportunity for people to come back in a celebratory manner and just enjoy the new content, but instead the online discussion has been about the nerfs, about how the update itself doesn't have enough to warrant coming back to it for a lengthy period of time. And the conversation about it is just overall negative in nature. However, I don't actually think that this is the core problem. Excessive nerfs are not the reason why it lost 90% of its player base. It could definitely be a contributing factor, but I think that Helldivers has structural issues that damages its longevity, that makes it hard for people to remain interested over the long term. The problem is that for a live service game, it's oddly empty in the endgame. In fact, I would go so far as to say that there is no endgame reward structure or progression system at all. At first, you go through the game and you level up and you unlock things slowly, going through the different difficulty levels. And while you're doing this, you're unlocking new stratagems, you're unlocking new weapons in the main warbond. Every time you complete an operation, you are able to go to a higher difficulty, which will have not only more enemies, but different types of enemies. And you will learn how to play and how to deal with them. And this is a very enjoyable process because you're progressing. You're being rewarded with the ability to unlock new stuff, meaning that it was incredibly fun and rewarding to play at the highest difficulty you can tolerate as you make your way to level 20 where you unlock all the stratagems. In my opinion, this is the most enjoyable part of the game, because after level 20, most of the progression disappears. There is still some of it, but it's unfortunately not very tied to difficulty, and there's no real endgame system. So let me explain what I mean. Deep Rock Galactic has a similar progression up until max level. As you play, you'll be able to purchase and unlock new primary and secondary weapons, as well as different upgrades for your weapons and armors and tools. But once you reach max level and promote your dwarf, the endgame rewards include overclocks. These are modifications that you can attach to your different weapons to make them perform in interesting ways. They can drastically change how a weapon works, with many adding in new mechanics, or making possible a playstyle that wasn't before. The point being that endgame introduces a new reward tier for you to go for. And along with overclocks, they also have deep dives. Deep dives are a weekly event where you go through 3 missions back to back. And the rewards for these are cosmetics and overclocks, which is the highest tiers of reward in Deep Rock Galactic. More importantly, there are 2 different deep dives, one is easier, and the other one is at the hardest difficulty, and both of them give out rewards. Helldivers, on the other hand, has no equivalent. There is no endgame system, new stratagems get unlocked whenever the developer decides to drop them. The only reward type that is tied to difficulty is super samples, and you use those to get ship modules. The problem being that ship modules are not exciting. They're not something that you can take into the mission and play around with and notice the differences very quickly. Many of the ship modules give you incremental increases to your stratagems. It's a comparatively lame reward when you consider that this is the only thing you get for doing Helldive missions. You can understand the philosophy of the Helldivers development team When you look at difficulty 10 missions, what's the difference between difficulty 10 and difficulty 9? Well, there's very little difference. The only big difference is that difficulty 10 has the mega outposts. And your reward for clearing them and extracting with the egg is 4 rare samples and 2 super samples. Hooray. I think the developers are putting too much trust on how much fun the game is to play. Maybe they believe that the endgame doesn't need material rewards past that. The problem is they're mistaken. Without new rewards or the possibility of new rewards, Helldivers 2 gets repetitive and boring very quickly. After level 20, when you've settled into a playstyle and have your favorite weapons and stratagems, you will probably have a loadout for the bugs and a different loadout for the automatons, and you will just stick with those. The war bonds do kind of shake up the situation and introduce new rewards. My problem with the war bonds, though, is that if you're not going to pay for them, and assuming that you have no super credits at the moment, then your choices are go to low-level difficulty missions and farm for them, which is boring and I'm not going to do, or continue playing naturally, play on Helldive, play on the highest difficulty that you can handle. But if you do that, the rate of you getting super credits is very small. According to the developers' estimates, 25 super credits an hour is what they expect people would get. And if in fact you are playing on the highest difficulty you can handle, that seems about right. Missions will sometimes not go well, sometimes you'll fail them, sometimes you'll clear them but you won't have had the opportunity to go across the entire map and clear all objectives. Sometimes you might decide not to go to the areas that have the super credits, because the mission is going poorly and you don't think you'll be able to get to extraction if you continue to engage the enemy in all these different places. It's unfortunate that the harder missions are the most fun to play, but also the ones where you're least likely to get access to all the super credits on the map. And super credits, unlike every other resource in the game, don't get a modifier or an increase from completing the mission on Helldive. In fact, there's no need to complete the mission at all. You can pick up the super credit, it's added to your account, and leave. So assuming that the 25 super credit an hour estimate is correct, then it'll take you 40 hours to get 1,000 super credits to buy something from the store. And if you're having the problem that I'm describing, where the lack of endgame rewards is stifling your ability to be interested, stifling your ability to play, then you're going to have trouble pouring those 40 hours to unlock the ability to get rewards again. And if I was in that tenuous state, where I am not having fun, then the idea of farming for those super credits to be able to start having fun again would be enough to make me drop the game. And even if you do buy it, the war bond doesn't last very long. People save up their medals and they'll have 250 when they start. They'll unlock all the weapons in the war bond very quickly and then be right back where they started. And I think this is the real problem. The reward system is bad and it overshadows every other problem that the game has. The game could use more and bigger content drops. We need the Illuminates to come in as quickly as possible. And the devs maybe are too eager with the nerf button. But I believe the real problem is that there's no endgame reward system that will keep people playing. And that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.